Hello everyone and welcome back to the Backend Masterclass. In the previous lecture, we've learned how to set up a Kubernetes cluster using AWS EKS. As you can see here, our simple bank cluster is already up and running. So today I'm going to show you how to connect to this Kubernetes cluster using two command line tools, kubectl and k9s. First, let's search for kubectl in the browser. Here it is. Let's open this page. So kubectl is a Kubernetes command line tool which allows you to run commands against the Kubernetes clusters. You can use it to deploy applications, inspect and manage cluster resources, and view logs. I'm on a Mac, so I will follow this link to know how to install the tool. It's pretty simple if you have Homebrew installed on your machine. Just run brew install kubectl. And that's it. We can run this kubectl version client command to see if it's working well or not. If it prints out the version of the client like this, then it means the tool has been successfully installed. Next step, we will need to verify kubectl configuration. Basically, kubectl will need to read some information from a config file in order to know how to access the Kubernetes cluster. By default, the file is located at this folder. We can use this kubectl cluster info command to check if the config is properly set up or not. Here we see an error because it's trying to connect to a local cluster, but we don't have any cluster running in our local host. We want it to connect to the AWS EKS cluster that we set up in the previous lecture. So we have to tell kubectl how to look for that cluster. In order to do that, here's the command we can use to fetch the AWS EKS cluster information and store it in the config file. AWS EKS update kubeconfig --name, then pass in the name of the cluster, which is Simple Bank in our case. Then the region where the cluster is located, which is EU West 1, and press enter. Oops, an error occurred. Access denied exception. And the reason is, user GitHub CI is not authorized to perform the described cluster operation on the Simple Bank cluster. So what we need to do now is to grant EKS permissions for this user. Let's go to AWS IAM service. Open the users page and select the GitHub CI user. If you still remember, as we set up in the previous lectures, this user only has permissions to access the ECR and Secret Manager services. And these permissions are actually coming from the deployment user group that the GitHub CI user is attached to. So to add a new permission, let's open this user group. Change to the Permissions tab. Click Add Permissions and select Create Inline Policy. In this form, we have to choose a service. Let's look for EKS. Here it is. There are many access levels, and in the read level, you can see the described cluster permission. You can select only this permission if you want, but since I want the GitHub CI to be able to make changes to the cluster and deploy application to it later, I will just allow it to perform all actions by checking this box. Next, in the resources section, you have the option to choose only some specific resources you want this user group to manage. Or you can simply allow it to manage all resources as I'm doing here. Okay, now let's click Review Policy. We must set a name for this policy. I'm gonna call it EKS Full Access. And click Create Policy. And voila, now the deployment user group will have full access to the EKS clusters. If we go back to the users page and check the GitHub CI user's permissions, we can see that now it has the EKS full access permission. That's because this user belongs to the deployment group, so it will be granted all permissions of the group. Okay, cool. Now let's go back to the terminal and run the update kubeconfig command again. This time it is successful. A new context for the Simple Bank cluster has been added to the kubeconfig file. Let's check the content of the kube folder. There's a config file as expected. Let's print out the content of this file using the cat command. At the top of the file, it has some certificate authority data. Then the URL of the server where we can access the cluster, followed by the name of the cluster, Simple Bank. Next, we have the context to access this cluster. It includes the ARN of the cluster and the user to access it, followed by the name of the context. which is also the current context, since we have only one context until now. And at the bottom of the file, there's some more detailed information of the user, which kubectl will use to get the token to access a simple bank cluster. Now, in case you have multiple contexts for different clusters on your machine, you can use this kubectl config use context command to select the context you want to connect to. Alright, now let's check if we can connect to our simple bank cluster yet or not. We can use the kubectl cluster info for this purpose. Oops, we've got an error. Unauthorized. You must be logged in to the server. Okay, so if you face the same problem, then this might be the reason. Your IAM entity isn't authorized by the RBAC configuration of the EKS cluster. This happens when the cluster is created by an IAM user or role that's different from the one you're using to authenticate and connect to it. Remember that the user I'm using on my local machine is GitHub CI. But initially, only the creator of the Amazon EKS cluster has the master permissions to configure the cluster. If we want to extend this permission to other users, we must add the AWS auth config map to the configuration of the EKS cluster. Okay, so how can we fix this? First, let's run this command in the terminal to check the current user identity. As you can see, it's the GitHub CI user, not the root user we used to create the cluster. That's why it doesn't have the permissions to access the cluster. So if we run this kubectl get post command, it will throw the same error as when we ran the cluster info command before. In order to fix this, we must use the access key ID and secret of the cluster creator account. At the moment, we're still using the access key of the GitHub CI user, as you can see in this AWS credentials file. Alright, now let's create a new access credentials for the root user, tech school. I'm gonna open my security credentials page in a new tab. Then select the access key section and click create new access key. The key has been successfully created. We can click on this to show the access key. I'm gonna copy the access key ID, then go back to the terminal and edit the AWS credentials file using Vim. We can list multiple different access keys in this file. So here I will put the old credentials under a profile named GitHub, and the new access keys will go into the default profile. First, paste in the access key ID, followed by the secret access key. I'm gonna copy its value from the AWS console and paste it to the file. Alright, let's save this file. Now I believe it will work. Let's try running the kubectl get post command. This time, there's no authentication error as before. It just says no resources found in the default namespace. That's because we haven't deployed anything to the cluster yet. Let's run the kubectl cluster info command. Here you go. The info is successfully returned. It contains the address of the control plane and the core DNS of the cluster. So it worked. We can now access the cluster using the credentials of the root user. Next, I'm going to show you how to give GitHub CI user access to this cluster as well, because later we would want GitHub to automatically deploy the app for us whenever we push new changes to the master branch. But first, let's learn how to tell AWS CLI to use the GitHub credentials. It's pretty easy. We just need to export AWS profile equal GitHub. Note that the name of the profile must match the one we declare in the AWS credentials file. Now, if we want kubectl cluster info again, it will fail because of unauthorized access as before. If we want to get back to the default root user, just export AWS profile equal default. Then this time, the cluster info command will be successful again. Alright, but how can we allow GitHub user to access the cluster? Well, to do that, we need to add this user to a special config map as shown in this example. I'm going to add this file to our Simple Bank project. So let's open the project in Visual Studio Code. I will create a new folder, EKS, to store all files related to Kubernetes. First, let's add a new file called awsauth.yaml. Next, we have to add the GitHub CI user to the map user section of this file. So I'm going to copy this example from step 7 of this tutorial and paste it to our awsauth.yaml file. We don't need the map role section, so let's delete it. Now in the map user section, we have to put the correct ARN of the GitHub user we want to give access to the cluster. We can find its value in the IAM console. Let's open the users page. Select GitHub CI and click this button to copy its user ARN. Then paste it here. The username should be GitHub CI. The group should remain the same as system masters. Okay, now we need to apply this config map to the RBAC configuration of the cluster. Let's run this kubectl apply command in the terminal. But we need to change the location of the file to eks/awsauth.yaml. There's a warning here, but it's okay because this is the first time we apply new configuration. And it clearly says here, the missing annotation will be patched automatically. So let's try switching to the GitHub profile and run the kubectl cluster info command. Oh, we still got the same error, unauthorized. So what happened? Let's go back to check the config map. Okay, I see. Looks like we've got a typo here in the user ARN value. The correct value should not have a duplicate ARN prefix. So let's fix it. Then go back to the terminal and apply the change again. Oops, I forgot that we are still using the GitHub CI profile. We must change to the default root profile first. Then apply the change again. This time it is successful. Now let's switch back to the GitHub CI profile and run kubectl cluster info command one more time. This time it worked. Excellent. So now you know how to grant access to the cluster to a user who is not the creator of the cluster. This will be useful when we want to set up continuous deployment process later. Now before we finish, I'm going to show you one more tool which I think is very cool and make it so much easier to interact with the Kubernetes cluster. The normal way to interact with the cluster is using the kubectl tool. For example, to get the services that are running on the cluster, we run kubectl get service. Or to get the list of running ports, we run kubectl get port command. For short and simple commands like that, it's okay to type, but it will become very annoying when you have to run longer and more complex commands that requires you to copy around the name or ID of the services or ports. To make it easier to interact with the cluster, we can use a tool called k9s. It gives us a very nice user interface and a set of convenient shortcuts to talk to the Kubernetes cluster. If you're on a Mac, we can install it with Homebrew. Let's run brew install k9s in the terminal. After it's successfully installed, we can just run k9s to access the cluster. As you can see, a nice UI shows up, and it's currently listing all ports of the cluster. There are 2 core DNS ports of the kube system. Because of some reasons, their status is still pending, but we will deal with it later in the next lecture. For now, I'm going to show you some useful shortcut commands to navigate the cluster resources. To switch the namespace, just type a colon, then ns, enter. It will show you all available namespaces of the cluster. You can use the arrows to select the namespace you want to access, and simply press enter to go into that namespace. And to get out to the previous screen, just press escape. Similarly, to list all services, we type a colon followed by service, then enter. To list all ports, just type a colon, then port and enter. If you have cron jobs running on the cluster, you can list them out by typing a colon followed by cj, enter. Or to list all available nodes, just type a colon, then node, enter. For now, there's no node in the cluster. Perhaps that's why the core DNS services cannot start and stay in pending state. Also, there are several more commands that are listed here on the UI. For example, to delete a resource, press Ctrl D, or to describe a resource, just press D. You can see all the information of the chosen resource. And you can always use the escape key to go back to the previous screen. Now let's take a look at the config map that we've updated before. It's the AWS auth config map in the kube system namespace. If we press D to describe it, we will see the GitHub CI user in the map user section. And it belongs to the system masters group, exactly as we wanted. Now press escape to go back to the previous screen. And finally, use a quit command to exit from k9s. And that's it for today's lecture. I hope you find it useful. Thanks a lot for watching. Happy learning and see you in the next lecture.